Welcome to tonight's show, week 7 together. My name is Alexa. I'm the head of online community here at Housecall Pro. I am joined by my co-host Roland, who's a co-founder of Housecall Pro, and Mel, our senior vice president of people. You can think of us as your in-house business, marketing, and HR strategy experts for this home service evening update. So each evening at 5 p.m. Pacific time, Monday through Thursday, we share the state of the world according to the home service industry, and we focus on one main guest or topic. So today's guest is Layne Merrifield. The reason we're bringing Layne on, so many businesses and so many business owners in the Facebook group, I keep seeing this over and over again. Everyone's saying, I wish we could go back to pre-coronavirus life. Well, as we're all aware now, we will never be returning to that. And the only way we can look is forward, especially when it comes to your business. So our special guest tonight is going to be talking about why you need to throw out your old playbook and how to get back to the core of good business basics that are going to set you up for success post-coronavirus. And then we will share the rest of the schedule for the week at the end of this broadcast. If you are not yet in the Facebook group, that's another great resource for you. We're over 2,800 members. I'm pretty sure we're going to cross 3,000 this week. So make sure you're inviting all your friends who own small businesses, especially those in the home service space. Other than that, if you want to watch past episodes, like I said in the beginning, this is week 7. Go ahead and go to YouTube. Just type in Housecall Pro, and there's a whole coronavirus playlist on there for you. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it off to Mel for your state of the world, and I will be back with Layne.
Great, thank you and good evening. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I'm Melina Fairley, Senior Vice President of People at Housecall Pro. Please feel free to call me Mel. And as mentioned, we come to you live Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And we start by just giving you a daily recap of what's going on in the news related to coronavirus. That way you can spend your day doing other things, knowing that every night, Monday through Thursday, you're going to get a quick update of what's going on. You won't miss any of the big news. We also bring you information, guests, advice, and hopefully give you guys a place to have a real sense of community. So here is your evening update for Monday, April 27th, 2020. The Johns Hopkins dashboard that we refer to each broadcast is reporting that globally we have crossed the 3 million confirmed cases mark and almost 900,000 recoveries and over 210,000 deaths. There we go.
There we go.
So there we are, over 3 million in the case count. So here at home in the US, we're at almost 1 million cases as of a few hours ago. Yep, hasn't changed. And it looks like over 56,000 deaths. And as far as recoveries, there we go, over 111,000 recoveries. So we'll continue to keep tabs on that every night for you.
Yep.
So also, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Were you going to point out how the map works?
Yeah, I was going to say real quick, and if you look at Canada, because that's where our guest is from, so 50,000 cases, which is about as many of the deaths that are in the United States, but obviously much lower deaths here. So you can zoom in on any of the provinces or the states.
Great.
All right, zoom back.
All right, so here in the States, after 4 consecutive days of increasing daily counts, New York State reported a decrease in new counts on Saturday, so that was good news. Today at the White House coronavirus press briefing, President Trump stated that cases in New Orleans, Detroit, Boston, and Houston are also declining. Georgia and Texas have been on most of our radar, and both appear to be remaining relatively steady in terms of daily incidents or daily new cases. Georgia's reported approximately 600 to 800 new cases per day over the past several weeks, and Texas has been around 800 to 1,000 new cases per day over a similar period. And their trends and their daily incidents, look to be holding steady. So those will be closely monitored over the next several weeks. As you probably know, Georgia and Texas are 2 of the states that have begun to ease some statewide physical distancing measures. So we'll all be taking a look at what's going on there. So in Canada, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a new rent subsidy program, which would provide financial resources to property owners and businesses to cover rent payments. So how it would work is the program would pay 50% of the rent for 3 months to the building owners, but require them to reduce the rent costs and refrain from evicting tenants. The businesses themselves would be required to cover the remaining rent. So an interesting subsidy there. Also in Canada, last week, Canada received over 1 million of the KN95 respirators from China, which were ones that were compliant for healthcare use, but once they were tested, the masks themselves did not comply with the government standards in Canada. So the government's determining whether the respirators can be used in another setting. We're hoping that they will be. And in good news in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson returned to work several weeks after being diagnosed with and hospitalized with COVID-19. And as we look towards the future and what the new world will look like, and as testing capacity increases worldwide, we're hearing that countries and businesses are developing plans to implement testing programs more broadly. We keep hearing lots of updates about not just number of cases, but number of tests and things. So one particular tool that's been mentioned recently by health and elected officials is immunity passports or immunity certificates, something that would allow those with antibodies to resume normal activities ahead of others. So the World Health Organization does note, however, that there is not currently sufficient evidence to determine whether individuals who have previously been infected with COVID-19 are immune to future infections. But one thing to watch as we all start to focus on what reopening or what easing of social distancing restrictions might look like in the future. Roland?
Thank you, Mel. Yeah, and one thing we always like to share now, we're going to start making at least a habit every Monday, is what we call our Trades Health Index. So this is particular to just the home services, and this is data based on what is in our system. And so we have a leading indicator and a trailing indicator. Blue represents 2019, red represents 2020. And as you can see here, going into week 17, an increase in jobs scheduled and another increase in jobs completed. So this is just good news overall, because it seems to be like we're trending towards another good week. So for those of you that have been saying, hey, I got some more jobs scheduled, or I feel like there's some more activity, we see that in our data as well. If you guys would like to, you're able to see this on any of the different verticals that we serve. So if you look at something, for example, like HVAC, HVAC is actually a little bit above where we were in 2019. So you can see some of these essential businesses really coming back. If you'd like to subscribe for updates, you can definitely do that. But we'll share this link out in the chat. So if you want to go take a look at it for your industry, or maybe even in your state where we have enough data, you can really dive in there and get a sense of what's going on and make sure that, you know, what you're feeling is actually what we're seeing in the data here.
Awesome. Thank you, Mel, for our evening update, or for our state of the world. Layne, I'm going to go ahead and have you unmute yourself and turn your video back on.
All right.
Awesome. All right, so we are now going to get into the main portion of our evening update for tonight. So I'm just going to start off by introducing Layne to our program. So Layne Merrifield, he's the newest dragon to join CBC's hit show Dragon's Den, and he's one of Canada's leading tech entrepreneurs. He's the founder of Club Penguin, which is the largest children's online social network. That's why we asked you guys that question in the beginning. And at age 28, he sold it to Disney for $350 million, and as their youngest executive vice president, turned it into a $1 billion brand. Most recently, Layne is the founder of Wheelhouse. It's an organization that invests and supports in early stage tech companies and entrepreneurs through mentorship, access to capital, and connections to global business networks. So he's here to share his insight on the coronavirus right now and how to beat it and how to come out on top in terms of your business and how to get back to those really core principles of what makes a good business. And actually, you two know each other, so I'd love for you guys to share how you guys know each other.
I'll let Layne take this story.
Come on, Roland. All right. Well, it all began a few months ago, sunbathing together in beautiful Hawaii.
Yeah, that's right. And a missed dive trip where the boat was full, and then you guys got stuck with a crazy dive master.
Yeah. No, we actually we just really clicked. I actually went to one of Roland's sessions on building community and on taking care of your customers. And I really just connected with it, because certainly at Club Penguin, we were taking care of kids from around the world. So, you know, a lot of talk about empathy and building relationships and connection. And so we just struck up a conversation after, and thankfully our significant others also got along really well. And so we ended up having a great time.
Yeah, that's a good story. More to come. So we're obviously really curious here we haven't had a guest yet that has been public about having coronavirus. And, you know, following you on Instagram, obviously knowing you, you went through that. So I think maybe for those that are listening, just follow the kind of firsthand account of what you went through and kind of how it was. And then maybe tie it back to, like, is there anything that you learned, specifically maybe when it comes to fear or those things that you think would be valuable for the pros to know?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because I know I've had a few people who thought they've had it and they've been like, yeah, but I don't want to tell anyone. It feels like, you know, they're tainted or something. I'm like, man, this is, you know, no one's fault. And I think it's worth talking about and hopefully helping others in some way. So my experience was I went on a snowboarding trip. I do a few of these a year with some buddies. This one happened to be at the beginning of March. So Canada, there was, you know, no lockdown, no self-isolation. You know, it was pretty much business as usual, except for everyone was just kind of watching what was happening in China at the time and in other parts of the world. And so, you know, I kind of was like, well, you know, who knows what might happen, but right now there's no directives to not do the trip. And the only request that they had made is, hey, if you've traveled outside of North America, please don't come on this trip just because we don't know what's going on and things are a little crazy. The trip happened to be in my home province here in Canada. So for me, it was a quick flight north for an hour and I was there. So anyway, jumped on into this trip, and about halfway through, we're literally on the side of a mountain snowboarding, and we stop and we see this helicopter go flying by. And this wasn't a helicopter trip, like it wasn't helicopter skiing or anything. And so we started asking, what's going on? Like, what's with the helicopter? And, you know, the guides are like a little cagey because they'd clearly been talking on the radios, and they said, well, we had to evacuate a guest this morning. And all of us kind of go, oh, what was he being evacuated for? And it was like, showing some symptoms. And so, so we ended up getting back to the lodge. They got us out of there as fast as they could. They told us all to be in self-quarantine until they got the test back from the individual. 2 days later, the test comes back positive. We all get an email saying, yeah, he did test positive. What we found out though, through kind of, because he wasn't a part of my group, he was part of a different group, but he had apparently traveled from Angola 4 days before and didn't think that the warnings were any big deal. He had symptoms when he came up. Apparently he had a bit of a fever and some other respiratory symptoms, decided to come on the trip anyway. Again, thought it was no big deal, thought everyone was making too much of a big deal about it. And I know, obviously, I don't know everyone on other trips, but within my own group, there's 12 of us total. 9 have been tested positive for it. And, you know, so again, just goes to show that there's some of the self-isolation is there for a reason. We were all, you know, I was certainly a bit frustrated with it, but ultimately what can you do? So 2 days later, I showed symptoms. Thankfully, I didn't have didn't need a respirator, didn't need to go to the hospital, but had, you know, awful fever, body aches, headaches. It was certainly the worst flu I've ever had. Anyone who says it's just the flu, it's not just the flu. I'm pretty healthy. I only usually, you know, get a cold once or twice a year. And overall, I've been really thankful that I've been pretty healthy. This thing knocked me off my feet. It was rough for about 2 solid weeks. And even now I still feel like I'm about 80% back, and I'm you know, almost a month now past it.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have seen it on the news. They've, you know, maybe they've heard of someone got it, but really, you know, it for me, I was like, oh, I was checking out your story. I was like, oh, wow, Layne and Amanda, oh my gosh, you guys are, you know, laid up on the couch. It's no joke. Obviously you went through that. There's probably probably a fearful, and then there's kind of like an acknowledgement. There's like the stages that you go through. You know, when you think about that, is there anything that you went through that you kind of learned about it that you'll take into something else, either, I don't know, business for sure, or something like that?
I think one of the biggest things that, you know, I tend to treat these things the same. So one of the things, and, you know, Roland knows this, but a lot of other people wouldn't, is that I also, I'm a pilot. So I fly myself as much as I can around, just a hobby, private pilot. But one of the things that they teach you a lot in dealing with risk and dealing with fear is, you know, to relax as much as you can, to take a breath, take a step back, assess the situation, figure out what you can control, figure out what you can't control, and then pour your energy into things that you can't control. And,
Yep.
and I think we need to do this, you know, certainly with this situation, it's like, well, I can't control, I'm sick. I can't control that. I can't control where I got it. I can be frustrated with the person, but that's not going to do me any favors. So, you know, what can I control? Okay, well, I can do everything I can to be healthy. I can listen to every expert out there in terms of how to get, you know, heal up as quick as I can. I can rest as much as, you know, do all the things I'm supposed to do. But then also it's like, how can I also, you know, how can I help others with this? You know, share the story. How can I get back? I've been involved with my local food bank here, trying to, we're doing a matching campaign now with them as a result of this, and trying, you know, figure out what I can control. And obviously for me in that moment, it's a good reminder of, okay, even from a business perspective, assessing the situation, what can I control? What can't I control? And what am I going to do about it? Because sitting back and fixating on the things that are outside of my control aren't going to do my business any better, aren't going to do my health any better. But fixating on the things that I can is the fastest way for me to get the results I want.
That's really good advice. Yeah, that's really good advice.
Well, kind of on the same point, do you think having the coronavirus has had an effect on the way you're thinking about business and life moving forward from this, other than just like assessing the situation in its current state? Like, do you think it's starting to shape the way you're thinking about how we're going to come out of this because you actually had it?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a couple things. I think anyone who says it's not really that big of a deal or we just need to let people catch it hasn't heard it. I think we need a balance, of course. I don't think we can just hold up in our houses forever. I think that we need to take a measured response, but it's serious. You know, I mean, I was scheduled to have dinner with my parents 2 days after I got back. If I would have ignored even the quarantine, this is before I found out that this gentleman had it. If I would have been like, well, you know, I'm not feeling sick, who knows? He probably just, you know, had some bad sushi, and I would have gone off and hung out with my parents who are in their mid-70s. My dad's had some respiratory issues in the past. You know, that could have been catastrophic. You know, and that could have been really, really serious. So I guess, you know, to answer your question, I think taking a look at, again, you know, from a company perspective, nothing's ever really going to be the same. It will be similar. I don't think it's going to wholesale shift to like, everything's going to be radically different. I think life will go back to normal, but it will still be a new normal. It will not be the exact same normal that we've had before. And I think recognizing that, for me, it's a little bit of like letting go of what I knew before and kind of putting back on some creative, innovative thinking and going, okay, assessing, you know, different businesses I'm involved in, invested in, and mentoring, really taking a look at all of them and saying, okay, what are we going to be betting on this new reality to look like, and how are we going to be adjusting?
Definitely, I think that's a great segue into our next segment. So, thank you for sharing that. You really are our first guest and first person I've spoken to who actually had the coronavirus. So thank you for sharing that. I know that's also very similar to our pros. I see people posting in our groups, in our communities all the time asking like, hey, does anyone actually know anyone who's gotten the coronavirus yet? So thank you for sharing.
You all do.
Yeah.
Now 104 of us do. Okay, so let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. So I want to emphasize first why we have guests like Layne on. So all of you watching right now, you're all entrepreneurs, you're all CEOs of your own businesses, whether you are one person or whether you are a 50 truck operation. And so now is the time that you need to start thinking this way and really put that cap on. So Layne, when we talked last week, you said pros need to throw out the old playbook and go back to good business basics. Can you walk us through that, please?
Yeah, well, so one of the things that kind of cultural shifts like this happen, you know, and I'm a big fan of history. I like to study history and look at what's happened before. And, you know, of course, it's never been exactly like this, but there've been moments in time that have had similar pivots as a society and adjustments. And I would say in the short term, coming out of moments like this, although there tends to be a healthy amount of kind of optimism, there also is a season of fear and a season of uneasiness that naturally occurs. And so, you know, the reason I bring that up is because one of my biggest things I talk about a lot in business, I talk about a lot in life and other things. I think one of the greatest business traits that any leader, any business owner any entrepreneur can have is empathy. And, empathy for your staff, empathy for your customers, and empathy being that ability to be able to put yourself mentally in someone else's shoes and as much as possible feel what they're feeling and then be able to respond to that. So great empathy creates great products on behalf of others. Great empathy allows you to see difficulties or cultural issues that might be brewing in your team or on your staff before they become major blowouts. And so I've talked about that a lot even before this virus hit. But I think more than ever, that's going to be a really important trait going forward. Because what that's going to allow you to do is have a sense of empathy for the fact that, you might come through this and be full of saying, hey, let's go hit the ground running. I'm really ready to go back to work. But there might be, for instance, customers that are like still struggling with this, still a bit uneasy, not sure what the future holds. And so, one of the things we were talking about last week is I think it creates a moment for us to take a breath and go back to some of the core basics that we know are the foundation for business. So it can be easy sometimes to just go, okay, well, let's launch into this new normal, but you got to make sure your foundation is really solid. And now, of course, there's a million characteristics of that, but a couple of them that I think are key is a strong sense of trust and building that sense of trust for your customers. I would even say sometimes rebuilding that sense of trust, not because they don't trust you, but because there's so much mistrust of just what's going on in the world right now. Hesitation of, who's saying the right things, who is right about this, who is wrong about this, name calling and throwing barbs at, even political barbs going back and forth all the time. There's just this natural air of mistrust. So I think, like for instance, I have a friend who is a dentist, owns his dental practice, and he has had to lay everyone off, is totally out of work right now, obviously. And he's a pretty young guy, so it's not like he's this established wealthy guy. Like he's still in debt from school and trying to make a go of it. And I was asking him about this. I'm like, man, because it sounds like, at least up in Canada, some of the next level medical services like dentistry and others might kick back in kind of in May, June timeframe. There's talk, who knows, right? But that's where the talk's going. And I said, what are you doing to get ready? And he said, well, for one, we're not going to be able to go as fast because we're going to have to triple clean every room in between every patient. We're going to have to look at our efficiencies. We're going to have to I'm adding in all these all these air purifier systems. And he kind of starts going through all this. I'm like, man, it feels like a bit of maybe even overkill. Like, if we've got a bit of herd immunity or whatever's going on, then like, is that, and he said, I'm doing it as much for every patient that walks in the door to see that they can trust me, to see that I'm being vigilant about this so they don't have to worry, as, it's as much a perception thing as anything. So, I think of like anyone who's like stepping into someone's home, maybe, you might not have put on a mask before, you might not have, put on gloves before, whatever, but it's like, and you might feel totally comfortable operating without a mask, without gloves, without whatever, but to that person in that place, they might not feel comfortable, so that's just one example of kind of building that sense of trust, kind of growing that. I think the next one is relationships, which is key. Tapping into those relationships, reaching out to people just to ask how they're doing. Kind of that grassroots groundwork effort. Reaching out to people you might have worked with in the past or partnered with in the past, or people that you think might be, you might be able to do some sort of collaboration with going forward in your business. Again, people kind of go back to the basics in times like these, looking to reestablish those real relationships, those business relationships, kind of figure out where they stand. And then, the other thing I'll mention, and then we can kind of move on, but certainly value is really critical right now. This is sadly, so many people's finances have been impacted. So many people's, there's a lot of fear around that. And so we're going to be going into a season where it's not going to be, hey, kind of charge whatever you want, or it's going to be competitive. People are going to be looking for value. People are going to be looking to try and kind of rebuild what they've lost during this season. And again, I could tell you examples of, I think I mentioned this example last week, a friend of mine who owns a little fitness studio. And so she started doing her classes online, charging $10 a month for it. She'd never done anything online before. She'd never, but she thought, okay, well, what would my friends be able to afford in a moment like this, where they might be out of work or one spouse is out of work? I'm not going to charge them $50, $60 like I would to come to the studio. I'm going to charge them $10 for an online subscription. They get access to everything. Simple pricing, very simple. And she had 3 different local competitors call her and yell at her for charging so little. Because they said, well, our gym memberships are $50 a month. How dare you charge so little for this? We're all charging the same $50 a month. And it's like insane to me, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to hold on to this old model. They're trying to hold on to this old strategy and simply replace the in-person experience with an online experience and not change anything else. And the reality is that's not showing empathy for their customer. That's showing really empathy for their strategy and their bottom line. And this is when, she kind of came in and said, okay, wait, let me just think about the people that are my customers. What can they afford? What are they going to be willing to spend? And the reason why they're yelling at her, or they should be yelling at her even more right now, is that I think she's got about 1,000 to 1,500 customers built up over the last couple of months. And, and that's allowing her to continue to employ some of her trainers and some of her teachers, because now they're doing these online classes instead of in-person classes. So again, it's just an example of like finding the right value and really having a lot of empathy for where people are at today.
Yeah, I feel like just taking a look back directly at your business, being like, hey, now that everything's different, where is the value? Where is it? And am I willing to like change my viewpoints? I'm not going to go back to business as usual because it might not work. But I think that like it goes back to your keystone, which is empathy, which is, you're putting yourself in someone else's shoes and you're like, how would that work from their end? So I feel like our pros, especially from the trust building aspect, have empathy for the customers. Just because you're an essential business, just because you're okay going in there without a mask, think what it's like for them to have someone who maybe they have not met before, or they really need something and they're coming into the threshold of the home. What are things you can do to make them feel comfortable? And I feel like that adds back into value, which is like, look, we care, we're doing this step, PPE, disinfecting, all these things. And this is why you're paying us what you are, because we built up that value. But it stems back from the empathy piece. So I feel like that's a really good golden nugget. And almost seems too obvious to be true, but it's really someone like everyone needs to reflect back at that point.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So let's talk a little bit, in the notes here, I put a little bit around, how do you think community folds into all of this? Because I feel like our customers are such like local cornerstones for their smaller local communities. And you talked a little bit about that, just the relationship building as that point number 2, but how do you see that community aspect really folding back into all these small local mom and pop shops? And what do you think they can do to either accelerate it or not, or tackle it, or how do they even start approaching like rebuilding some of that, and how should they be acting inside of their community in a time like this?
Yeah, well, obviously community means different things for different people depending on what the business is and where they're located. But I think, as it relates to kind of your customer base and your location, there's so many ways that you can reach out and connect with your community now than ever before. And especially virtually. I mean, this is a perfect example where it's like, Roland, we haven't seen each other in person for 4 months, 5 months, something like that. And, would have happened before now, but again, it's a great example of like, hey, a couple of emails, jumping on a Zoom call, and it's like we've never left, or like we were just hanging out yesterday. It's that kind of there's tools like Zoom, there's tools that are out there to utilize. And so I think doing an assessment of what those tools are, it doesn't mean you have to kind of figure out everything, but figuring out, okay, what are some of these tools I can use to continue to keep this community knit together? It's that knitting together that's the powerful thing. I mean, we used to talk about Club Penguin back in the day. People would say like, oh, it's a fun game, or it's a fun this, or it's fun whatever else. Inside the walls of our offices, and ultimately the walls of Disney, we would talk about, we said, you know what, it's actually a community management machine. It's the greatest community management machine we could have ever built. Because what it was a place for connection to happen. Yes, it was happening around games and around tasks and around adventures and all these little things that we built. But from a macro perspective, it was really about using this platform to guide this community through a narrative and a journey and an experience that they could have together. They could talk about with each other. They could communicate with each other. And so it's less about how it's done, the tools you use, where you do it. But again, it's about those fundamentals of like maintaining communication. Things like if you've got a Facebook page and, you might even see more activity on it because people are having more time at home to be able to, look for this stuff. It's like, make sure that your data's, your information's correct. Make sure that you're responding to comments, making sure that you are engaging in those conversations, making sure you're responding if someone leaves a negative review. Don't just turn the reviews off. You know, and again, it doesn't mean you have to manage 5 different platforms. You may choose for your business, say, hey, our platform, the best way we can connect with our community is going to be Facebook. The best way we can connect with our community is going to be, you know, Instagram, or is going to be, you know, Twitter. Whatever the tool is, figure out what that looks like for you, and then maintain it and nurture it. And if you're not going to, then don't be on it. Because again, you know, unfortunately, some of these platforms where someone sets up an account, they throw all their stuff out there, and then they just ignore it for the next 6 months.
Ghost town, yeah.
Turns into a ghost town, and it doesn't feel like much of a community, right?
Yep.
And so anyway, it's a long-winded answer to your question, but
So I really like what you said about how everyone has a different version of community. So for us, this is our version of it in Housecall. Community, online and offline, is equally as important to the quality of our product, if not more important at times. Roland and I are in there every day. So I want to talk, let's maybe give some ideas around how this could work in the context, like we have in the context of the home services. So as you were talking, I'm kind of trying to string together what can hit on relationship building, on community building, building value. So some ideas that I wrote down. One is just calling your customers to check in on them. That is building community. That is building value and trust. That is something that we've been talking about for 7 weeks now. And as you guys have found out, a lot of times those are maybe going to turn into jobs or estimates booked or reviews generated. So that's an idea I wrote down. And then kind of like we were talking about right now, these Zoom calls are freaking awesome. I've been attending so many Zoom webinars. Give a free tutorial on how to change the light bulb. Think about the simplest thing that maybe your customer can do and do a free tutorial. Have them invite their friends and their neighbors. You are having a whole community around you now, and you're the center point. You're the one teaching them and talking to them. So that's an idea I had when you were speaking. And then partnering with other small businesses, as you said, support each other on Instagram and on Facebook, tag each other, do like a 2-way tag thing. There's so many ways you can go with this here, and you can be the one to think about it first in your community. I love this whole thing.
I think one of the things, I think you really hit the nail on the head too. Obviously, it's easy to focus on kind of tech solutions, high tech solutions, social media solutions, and they're all very relevant. And I don't think anyone should stay in the dark about them. But the telephone is a technology solution, right? It's an older technology solution. It's been around a lot longer, but it's still, again, utilizing technology to build connection. And that's all any of these other platforms are as well, just to demystify them. Sometimes it can be overwhelming. Well, should I like this? Should I hashtag that? Should I, just start by connecting with people in a really meaningful, vulnerable, honest way. And starting, to your point, using the technology of the telephone to just pick up the phone and have a conversation with someone. For some of these customers, it might be the only phone call they've gotten that day, or there might.
That's a great point.
And again, you talk about building trust, you talk about building relationship, you talk about kind of adding value to their world. It's huge. It's huge. And again, frankly, it could almost be a little bit of a counter tech solution, because probably they're, getting lots of emails. I know my inbox, it's been great. I've been able to subscribe from a ton of stuff that I didn't even know I subscribed to, because everyone's giving us their response to COVID, and it's, 14 paragraphs long or whatever. So to get a phone call might actually be a really welcome reprieve or a change, Anyway, so yeah, it's using whatever tools. If you've got a list of phone numbers, use those phone numbers. If you've got a list of emails, use those emails in a really meaningful way, in a personal way. If you've got a Facebook page, use that page, but use it and engage with it and try to reach out, and being proactive, like you said, I think is really smart.
Yeah, and I would say the last tip is just be authentic and don't sell. Like, now is not a time to be selling yourself. Just be there and just add value. And I promise you guys, like, these are seeds that you're planting today that will bear fruit later. So don't do it for, hopefully I can find a way to pitch my angle or something like that. Just give, and people will naturally come to you, especially if you're the one that's demonstrating, you're the thought leader in the space, or you're helping someone. What you guys said is great. Even engaging in local Facebook groups that are either like the local parent teacher associations, for the school, for education. Small towns have their own little marketplace areas. Just engage there, and that's it. And just add value when you can, and be authentic. And My last tip there is you have to be consistent. So the last thing that you said was like, don't let it turn into a ghost town. I see far too often people just try things, they don't get results right away, or they try it like 2 or 3 times and they're like, I don't know, this community stuff, it doesn't work. See you guys. Consistency is the biggest thing. And this is, the reason why we do this webcast as often as we do, because if we're consistent about it and deliberate about it, eventually it catches fire. And it's been really fun just having guests and having you on, Layne.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to totally butcher the quote, but like Warren Buffett has this quote, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. What you said in terms of just sowing seeds now, this is not the time where you're going to, reap a ton of results, but it is the time to build a really strong foundation and really grow your footprint, in meaningful ways, so that as soon as these floodgates open up again, you're the one they're calling, you're the one they're going to, you've built that trust, you've sowed those seeds, and now you can start reaping when the time comes. But you're right, it's not always a short game. Sometimes in business, everyone's just looking for the quick thing and they're bouncing around from idea to idea to idea, spinning their wheels, pouring tons of energy into it. And if they were just consistent and grew in a few key ways, they'd find more success.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about planning. With a lot of uncertainty, there's only so much that you can plan. But one thing that you can be in control of is your actions, and if you're moving forward and just not being frozen. So as we think about, pros thinking about, the next 30, 60, 90 days, what are some things they should be thinking about as they're trying to at least forecast or plan a little bit? And do you even think that pros should be thinking a year out from now, or is that just, foolish?
Well, you'd always be thinking, a year out. I think if you were saying I'm thinking 5 years out from now, that would be foolish. But yeah, I think, the 30, 60, 90 days goes back a little bit to what I was saying before in terms of kind of assessing what you have control over, assessing what you don't, and acting on what you can control. One of the things I talk about a lot is the power of applied creativity. During my time at Disney, first of all, I was a huge Disney fan even as a kid. So my first job was at Disneyland in California.
That's awesome.
Then in my late 20s, when they ended up buying my company, it was like this crazy dream come true. And that's one of the reasons why I spent 5 years actually there before going back to entrepreneurialism, is because, I just love the company so much. But one of the things I learned at Disney is the difference between Disney and a restaurant at the theme park and a restaurant any other place is that applied creativity. I mean, first of all, the price of the food is crazy, so that's a bit different. But it's the creativity that's applied to that experience. It's the theming, it's the ideas, it's the cast members, it's the costumes, and Disney is able to charge so much, because for that same, can of Coke or bottle of Coke or whatever, because of the experience that they're wrapping it in, right? And I take from that, of course you go, yeah, easy for Disney because they're all about, stories. But anyone can apply creativity to their business, right? It's just, what is that wrapper going to be? What are you going to wrap around your business that's going to be unique? How are you going to move it from a commodity type business or opportunity into something that is unique? It could be as simple as like what you're talking about, Roland, like showing up and having more respect for, like PPE and their fears or concerns, and walking into their home than what anyone else will do, right? And you're wrapping that in a sense of safety and security and calm, and all of a sudden they're going, okay, I get this. We were talking about this idea of like what you said, like tossing up a video of like how to change your air filters in your house, stuff like that you think, well, it's not that hard. Yeah, not for you, but I guarantee you there's a lot of people that are paranoid of that.
I don't even know what mine is.
Yeah, but especially when right now everyone's a little nervous about what's floating around in the air, that's something that could actually, get a lot of, views and build a lot of trust, right? And so it's figuring out, okay, what do we have in front of us and how can we apply some creativity to that? Creativity might be in how you communicate, could be creativity in how you're pricing and the way you set up a new business model in maybe a new business that you're offering. It's, people always think creativity and they think like artists or musicians or whatever else. I mean, I always make the joke that some of the most creative people in business I've ever worked with have been the accountants. Yeah. how creatively they can move some of those numbers around in legal ways, of course. But you know what I mean? So anyway, my point is I think there's huge opportunity right now to redefine and adjust, but it takes the time to, and it takes intention to do that.
So let's get creative. You just got a loan from the U.S. government for $10,000, and you are a carpet cleaning company. Where are you going to go spend those $10,000? What are you going to do with it? Let's get super creative.
Oh boy.
My creativity. I love
Alexa, I'm going to ask you too, Alexa. So Layne, you get to answer first. Alexa, you better start thinking.
Okay. Wow. Well,
$10,000.
I've never been in the carpet cleaning business, but I will say, what would I spend? Well, you know what? Again, it's like I would, from a community perspective, I'd want to look at kind of marketing and how I marketed in the past. I think marketing safety. It's funny because most people wouldn't typically describe themselves as the safest or the cleanest carpet company ever. But we're just kind of going back to what we're talking about. Like you could simply show up in a replaceable uniform or something like that, and at least for a time like this, and go out and you could spend that on marketing or remarketing in a different way, right? How can you differentiate yourself? And it's not saying, well, why do I care about being the cleanest carpet company? It's not about that. It's how do you show empathy to what your customers are going through right now? And there's a lot of fear out there. So, how can you respond to that fear in a really positive way? And so again, maybe you're putting it into marketing, maybe you're putting into some retrofitting of some of your tools. Maybe it's again, even renovating a truck or doing something, applying kind of forecasting what this new reality might look like, where your customers are going to be feeling, and applying ideas to that. But Alexa, I'd love to hear your.
All right. So obviously first I would look at the areas of my business that are maybe bleeding right now. But for me, always, like my mind always goes towards marketing. What can I do that my competitors aren't right now? I've already pitched this to Roland. I was like, I'm going to quit and do this. If I were a carpet cleaner, what's your fake carpet cleaning company name, Roland?
Pool Boy Carpet Cleaning. It makes the most sense.
I were the owner of Pool Boy Carpet Care. I would start doing a rug pickup service, like a takeout service. I don't even go inside the house. I would pitch it as like, you have your kids home, you maybe have your parents there, you have a full house right now, and you're getting way more dirt tracked in the house. We'll pick that up for you and make sure that it's clean, and we'll drop it off. You don't even have to see us. So I would use that money to launch a new service, I think, and one that would make me money during this time and set me apart from my competitors. Also, you get a bunch of really good before and after photos from that, which you guys know I'm a fan of. That's what I would do. I'd launch a new service.
Well, and you could even just add one word to the back of it and call it, it could be your Pool Boy Carpet Cleaning. And that may have been on your trucks for the last, 15 years or 20 years. But you add the one word, carpet cleaning and disinfecting. Disinfecting might have been part of what goes on with the chemicals you're using anyway to clean it. Like that might have been happening for the last 15, 20 years. You might not have to do anything differently in terms of what you're actually doing. Again, I don't know carpet cleaning well, so I don't know. But just by adding that one word, now all of a sudden goes, oh, well, I was thinking about cleaning the carpet, but it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to disinfect it, at a time like this. If that's something they can do. And it might be as simple as applying a different aerosol or just a service. Maybe it's a service you apply on top of it. Hey, we can clean it. Would you like the disinfecting package? We do an aerosol disinfectant. We let it sit for a certain amount of time. Then we deliver it right back to your door, right? But it's those kind of things that go all of a sudden, hey, everyone's willing to clean the carpets, but these guys offer disinfecting. Who knows kind of how complicated that is? That's not my business, but it will apply to where people are at today and where they're concerned.
So I guess to generalize it, figure out a service, whether or not you offer it right now, that has to do with sanitation, disinfecting, anything that has to do with purifying, and use those keywords to market yourself. It really does not matter what industry you are in. Get creative with it, whether you're doing indoor or outdoor work. Figure out that service and put some marketing dollars towards it. Those are the ones your customers are going to be looking for right now.
Yeah, my brother's my brother's in a roofing company, and they do roofing and disaster recovery kind of services. Because obviously, typically when a roof goes, it usually went in a hailstorm.
It's a disaster. Yeah.
And that was a minor part of their business for a really long time. Roofing was number one, and then they kind of did some of this recovery stuff number two. But they're actually pivoting a bit of that recovery into office commercial cleaning, commercial disinfecting. And again, a lot of offices cleared out before. They're not at high risk, but the owner of those offices, or the whether it's a landlord or whether it's a business owner or a manager, wants their employees to feel comfortable coming back to work when the time is right. And so they've been pivoting to say, hey, during this downtime, when your office is empty, we'll come through and use our, instead of kind of cleaning out after a disaster, we're going to use all our same tools, but we're going to be coming and doing an end-to-end cleaning of your facility and putting a seal of approval on it, so that when your staff or customers start coming back, they can feel safe. And again, they're not doing anything radically different than if a hurricane had hit. They have all the same tools, but they're just pivoting on the marketing.
Yeah, I think it's being adaptable
for your employees. Sorry, I'm only saying that because I stopped at Housecall office this weekend, and we need that service to go back. I feel like we would spend the entire day feeling uneasy, just because we moved out in such a hurry, and it's now been hot there. The AC hasn't been on. Just letting your employees know, you've gotten all the tune-ups you needed, it's been cleaned regularly. That's going to make them feel a lot safer to go back to your office, your warehouse. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think being adaptable is kind of a keyword that we didn't really mention, but all of this is just being adaptable and willing to pivot and try new things. Now is the perfect time to try. Just try. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. Everyone's doing all kinds of silly stuff right now. So just put your foot out there and give it a shot. So one question that we started asking recently, which is, now that you've been on the show, the types of questions that we ask and the types of customers that we have, who's going to be someone you can introduce us to that's going to provide a lot of value to our pros?
Someone I could introduce you to. Boy, that's a good question. I think about even one of my fellow dragons on Dragon's Den. So, for those that don't know, Dragon's Den was actually the show before Shark Tank. So Dragon's Den was in Canada. And then a man, who likes to call himself Mr. Wonderful, left Dragon's Den to go start Shark Tank down in the U.S. But anyway, so one of the other people on Dragon's Den up here in Canada is called Michelle. Her name's Michelle Romanoff, and she's kind of a wizard when it comes to digital marketing and learning how to measure cost of acquisition, learning how to kind of find and filter. And digital marketing can be it can either be a huge money and time suck if you do it poorly, or it can be a huge boom to your business if you do it well. And the tools are getting better. They're getting easier to use, but you need to know kind of how to measure and what to measure. So she's pretty awesome when it comes to that. And so I definitely recommend her. I can certainly think of some others.
That would be awesome. Yeah. If you guys would like to learn about that, throw it in the chat. I'd like to learn about that. I'd like to talk to her. Layne, we have 2 more questions for you, and then we're going to open it up to some Q&As. So this was a really good lead-in. What would you be looking for if you were going to invest in a home service company right now?
Well, I think I'd be right now, I'd be sitting down with the entrepreneur or the owner and saying, hey, how are you looking at this? How are you responding to this? Give me 5 of the ideas you're kicking around your head right now. And if they don't have any ideas, then I'd be concerned. If they've got 15 ideas and they're going to do all of them simultaneously, I'd be concerned. But I'd be looking for ones who say, okay, you know what? I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try this, and here's kind of my method to my madness. Here's how I view the world. This is kind of my hypothesis of the way things I think are going to change. And here are some of the things I'm going to do. Here's what I can do right now about that and how I can prep for it. And here's what I can do once some of the restrictions start being lifted and how I can go after that. But I'd want to see that. And it wouldn't, for me, it's not even about any particular industry or any particular trade that's going to be that I would want to be targeting. I always say as an investor, I want to invest in entrepreneurs. It's so cliche to say, but I've invested in some bad entrepreneurs, some great ideas with some bad entrepreneurs, and I've lost my money every time. And I've invested in some average ideas with great entrepreneurs, and I've tended to do a lot better. And so, one of the other big things, I talked about creativity earlier. One of the other things that can happen sometimes is fear can set in. We talked about fear that our customers will have and things like that. But we also need to kind of do our own self-checks, because fear can kind of start to grip us too, and start to take over and start to hold us back from being kind of creative and innovative, from taking that time and that space to really kind of explore your company, brainstorm ideas. And so it's, we need to be checking ourselves too, to make sure that, hey, we're not letting fear kind of paralyze us at this time, but we're really going, okay, how can we move and evolve? And also, to your point, you asked, hey, who can I meet? Everyone in their network has different businesses and different people in their world that are different than them. And so say, hey, I'm going to set up a Zoom. I'm going to send you all, whatever. I'll ship you all a bottle of wine or a local dinner for the night. And I just want to do a brainstorm on my business, and I want to throw some ideas at you guys that I'm thinking about. And these are people that aren't in your industry or aren't running similar businesses, but just to say, hey, I want to pitch you some ideas that I'm thinking about, and just give me your honest feedback. And is this something you'd invest in? Is this something that you pay for? And that can be so invaluable. And what, might cost you 50 or $100 in some meals for some people or whatever, can end up, becomes well worth it. Exactly. And it allows you to kind of pre-vet some different ideas or some things you're kicking around, or get some new ideas that could be a huge win for your business.
Mm-hmm. There's actually, now that you're saying that, this one pro comes to mind. Her name is Emily Marina. She owns Village Chimney Sweep. So they are chimney air quality. And she was kind of testing out new ideas for service plans. And so she just posted on her Facebook page saying, hey, friends and family, we're thinking about doing a service plan with wood delivery or something. It was in the middle of winter. And she was getting all of this feedback in like real time comments from people who use her services. So that's another creative way. That's what made me think of it. I think it's genius.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. All right, Alexa, I like this question here. This one's kind of interesting here. So a lot of pros want to build their business of celebrities and exclusive customer base. How would a home service pro get your attention, Layne? Where do you go for recommendations?
Boy, I mean, I tend to get my recommendations the same way anyone else does. You put it out there. I'll put it out to Facebook. I'll put it out to my friends. Hey, does anyone know? Does anyone have a relationship with? For me, because I'm pretty useless when it comes to fixing most things or repairing most things. Like when I'm looking for someone to service something at my house or whatever. I almost always am asking for people that they know and people that they trust. I'm looking at reviews. If I can't find someone, on a Google review, I can't find someone Facebook review. They've turned off reviews on their Facebook page. Yeah. It always makes me nervous. And so I'm usually doing my homework digitally to try and find them. That's the other thing too, is if someone's like waiting for the phone to ring, but they don't have a great web page, or they don't, they don't have any kind of presence, or their information's wrong. The amount of times I've looked for someone on Google and seen the phone number come up, called the number, and it's like a fax machine. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? Why I can't find you this way. I don't know how to find you. So anyway, but yeah, that's, but again, it's part of like nurturing all those different angles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for pros, obviously, figure out how you get those referrals and recommendations and get people to be willing to say your name in front of others. Because ultimately, just relationship building like that is what's going to get you that job. And it's also going to let you charge the price, because that trust is built in because as a referral. Because if my friend used it, I don't know, they liked it, it must be a good price. I'm just going to go for it. I'm not going to question or try to get triple bids. I'd rather just go with the safety of that trust network that's already pre-established.
100%. One of the other things too is sometimes people listen, what works for your business works for it, so I'm not going to judge it. But sometimes we try to get too tricky with referrals, and like, if you refer me, to 3 friends, you'll get this deal, and 5 friends, you'll get this deal. And it almost turns it into like a multi-level marketing thing. I've seen a lot of people just put out on their Facebook page saying, hey, I'm working really hard to grow my business. You know, would love and welcome any kind of referrals if anyone can kind of put it out there. And it just puts it in someone's mind to go, oh yeah, actually, I remember my brother was asking about that, or my aunt was talking about that. Yeah, let me try and connect. And it's like almost like an authentic ask is almost more powerful than like a pre-established. And I'm not saying, I mean, listen, I'm a fan of referral programs. They can work there, you know, in the right place, right time. But certainly at a time like this, you know, I'm doing everything I can to try and promote my friends' businesses and people that I trust. I think everyone's looking to want to help people out if they trust them. And so, you know, even reaching out, you could even reach out to your customer base and say, hey, listen, I'm piloting a new service. I want to help people disinfect their homes or their offices, you know, before they go back to work. You know, would love any referrals of people that you think I might, you know, just put it out to your community, your local network, and you'd be amazed at how much people want to. That's a way for them to get involved by simply posting about it on Facebook or something, or, you know, it's a way for people to help each other out remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen a couple pros do something clever, which is them calling their customer base and asking them, hey, I've got 5 extra air filters. Do you have a friend who needs one replaced right now? And they're like, oh yeah, I got this friend and this friend and this friend, because they're giving their friend something valuable free. An air filter. It costs you pretty much zilch. And you know, when you get there's going to be something else wrong. There's going to be a capacitor, blah, blah, blah. But you know, for the price of an air filter, you already have people that are just recommending their friends to go get those things. So think about how you can induce that in a way where you provide value first, always value first. And if that's all they do with the air filter, that's it. Don't go for anything else.
That's all you're doing for now, because you're just
planting the seeds,
making your footprint. Another thing I want to add to that too, please claim your Google My Business page. I never trust a company that their Google My Business page isn't set up, or like their website isn't connected. They have some weird looking address. Make sure all of your information is accurate on the internet. You can do a little audit, whether that's on your Facebook page, your website, definitely Google My Business page, getting Google verified. Let's see. Kind of on the same topic, we'll ask 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll have you leave our pros with the one thing that you would tell them to do tomorrow. Let's talk more about marketing tools. What are the best marketing tools to use in your opinion? Or maybe it's a type of marketing that you just believe in more than other types.
Well, I mean, basic digital marketing is what you just talked about, which is making sure that your digital footprint is accurate and is up to date. That's always, you know, you have to start with that. You know, right now, especially because there's, you know, a lot of industries that are completely shut down, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, things like that have really, you know, certainly, at least maybe not in every industry, but in a lot of industries have actually driven the cost of things like Facebook ads and Instagram ads and social media ads down quite a bit. And so the opportunity is there actually to get a lot more bang for your buck almost more than there ever has been. And so I would certainly recommend kind of diving into that. You know, digital marketing is a huge opportunity there. And again, people hear digital marketing and sometimes they just tune out because like, well, I've never done Facebook ads, or I've never known it doesn't, whether or not you're boosting or posting or any of that kind of stuff. Again, it could be simply something as simple as Roland mentioned earlier, going onto forums that other people are talking about this stuff, and not selling yourself, but simply answering questions, you know, giving advice, giving some free advice to people, you know, things like that maybe take you 10 seconds of time and a lot of expertise, but to someone else who doesn't have that expertise, it's invaluable. And that's, you know, again, you're building that community there. And maybe all you do is encourage them to say, hey, you know, would you know, like my Facebook group, like my Facebook page, if this is something that's helpful to you. And that's all you're asking for. But now you're bringing them a part of your community and helping grow your community through things like that. So again, yeah, I'm checking time, so I'm trying to make sure I'm being quick here.
No,
that's good.
Totally fine. Kind of on that same note, if you are not in your local Facebook groups, in your local Facebook communities, whether it's the PTA or it's just like your local neighborhood free and for sale pages, make sure you're in there. And like Layne said, giving free advice. There's bound to be people in there who have questions, and there's a really handy tool on all Facebook groups. On the left-hand side, there's a search bar. So you could search for, if you're a plumber, plumbing, or any of your keywords of your services, look in there and then sort by most recent. And then you can see people who have questions like trolling. Trolling's a bad word. I don't want to call it that. You're
fishing.
fishing, helping.
There you go.
You are nicely trolling these pages to offer your advice and your help, because those people, like, don't be afraid to friend them either, especially if they're in your local community. That's how you build that foundation. That's how you grow strong roots. I think that's really what we want to drive home with this.
One other thing too is, we've all got amazing cameras in our pocket, amazing devices. It's so easy. Maybe you go on a call or you're doing some of your own maintenance on your own house. And, I was joking about changing your air filter in your air, in your air conditioning, your HVAC system. It could be something as simple as saying, hey, I'm going to just film myself doing this in my own house. I'm just going to post it to YouTube.
Yeah.
And then I don't even have to, I don't even have to rewrite the advice every time. I could just say, hey, I'm going to go search for people who are looking up how to do this or talking about, HVAC on groups. You might even just say, hey, if anyone's looking, I just posted a great video on how to change your air filter.
That's a good idea.
Offered for free during these times when you need to do some of this kind of stuff yourself, right? Like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sows seeds, as you said earlier, Roland, sows seeds for the future and builds trust for the future.
And also some good SEO juice. You're
Big
doing
time.
on your blog and your YouTube.
Big time.
Okay, so you've been listening to a lot of podcasts, Layne. What is your favorite podcast right now?
Well, it depends on what it is. If I'm talking business, I love How I Built That, which is an NPR podcast where
with Guy Raz.
Startups. Someday I'm going to be listening to Roland, How I Built That. Housecall Pro. So I love those stories just because it's a little bit like they're just raw, honest. You hear about how many companies are right on the edge, how many founders were like 1 month away from having to call it quits. Mm-hmm. And then they go on to become a $1 million, $1 billion company, and the ups and downs, and because it's like an hour long, you get to hear a deeper story than just sound bites that you might get in a kind of quick answer. I'll say one other one is, Joe Rogan podcast, man. He has some of the craziest people on, and I love that crazy on all fronts. Like he'll have he'll have like the extreme scientist and the extreme skeptic on, all within the same week. Like he
throws Mike Tyson in the mix, and then it's all over from there.
They're all like 3 hours long.
I know, Mike Tyson and then Elon Musk. And it takes me, I probably only get to about a tenth of them, but even just looking through and seeing who the interesting people are and, chiming in for a bit.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
All right,
okay.
What's the last question we ask all of our guests? I'll let you ask that one, Alexa.
The last question we ask all of our guests, Layne, what is the #1 action item that our listeners should do tomorrow to move the needle forward in their business? One thing.
I would say the biggest thing is to throw out major chunks of your old strategy. Don't wait for the world to go back to the way it was, to go back to normal. Anyone who tells me like, God, I can't wait till this is all over and everything goes back to normal, just terrifies me. Because what it tells me is that by the time they get up to speed, their competitors will already be there and they'll end up being behind. Like, as I said, I'm not some kind of crazy extremist who thinks that the world's going to be wearing masks forever from now on till eternity. But I do think that there's going to be a new normal. So if you're just sitting around waiting for everything to go back to the way it was, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. Right now is a great time to, if you've got time on your hands, to be trying some of these new strategies, be experimenting, be listening to pundits and analysts and news people, whatever, who are trying to figure out what the future might hold, and then layer that onto your business. I've heard from 4 different mentors and friends that I really respect in their companies, and we're talking, one who works for a $1 billion clothing company or multi-billion-dollar clothing company, all the way down to my friend who runs the fitness studio in our local community. All of them talk about how they have to throw it out. They have to give up what was. They have to abandon this notion of going back, and they have to start from scratch and really rethink, what is this new future going to hold? Now, it doesn't mean that they have to change 100% of their business, but they do need to change a good portion of their perspective in order to figure out, how does my business fit into this new perspective, and what parts do I need to get rid of, what parts might be bleeding, what parts might be bleeding forever, and what opportunities are out there that I can go after. And, you know, one of the things too, we're all kind of cooped up. It's a little crazy making. I know for me, 90 Day Fiance, I've burned through more shows of 90 Day than I would be proud to admit. It's embarrassing, but I share it anyway. But no, I mean, the reality is it's so easy to kind of spin in frustration during times like this. You know, one of the things I talked about at Disney all the time is the way you breed creativity is through space and is through time. You know, running a creative company requires space and time, which is what we learn about at Disney all the time. So again, I realize not everyone's running Disney, but give yourself some space and some time. Give yourself some freedom to say, you know what, I'm going to take 3 days, or I'm going to take 2 days, or I'm going to take this weekend, and I'm going to just give myself some time to brainstorm some different ideas. I'm going to grab a big piece of paper or a whiteboard or a window in my house and grab some whiteboard markers. And I'm just going to brainstorm out, if I were starting this business from scratch today, what would it look like? What would I keep? What would I throw out? And give yourself the time to do that. Because sometimes we give ourselves moments in the day. You know, maybe it's like when we're taking a shower, when we're in the bathroom, and then all of a sudden we go back to the hustle and bustle. It's like, use this time to really survey the landscape, figure out what you have to work with, and then go try some new ideas.
Love it. Super helpful. I could do that for like weeks. Draw on all the windows.
Most of my genius ideas come in like the middle of the night. I wake up and I'm like, what does that mean?
There's science behind that. Boredom, actually. They say boredom breeds creativity, right? So let yourself get a little bored. Don't have a screen in front of you the whole time. You know, go sit out and watch the clouds go by, watch the sunset. You know, do things that maybe you think, oh, I would have never taken the time to do that before, because that's where the part of your brain where the new fresh ideas come from. That's where it grows. It is in boredom.
Okay, so stop watching TLC and start watching the clouds. Got it. Okay. And
in San Diego, go look at the bioluminescence.
Oh yeah. As a supplement to this, we have created that 90-day playbook. We've been talking about it since last week with Brooks and Janelle. With who else did we have on to talk about the 90-day playbook? Maybe that was it. But it will help you craft your own. It's a nice read. I put it there in the comments. It's content.housecallpro.com/90-day-playbook. It's free. We made it for you guys. Go ahead and download that if you're looking for that. It's also on our website, housecallpro.com/coronavirus. Before we sign off, I want to talk about our guests for tomorrow. So we have Jocko Willing. He is on to talk about how to take control over situations you can't control, which Layne, you even talked about that in the beginning when you're sharing your experience, I think word for word, about the coronavirus. So Jocko is a retired Navy SEAL. He's a podcaster, author, and keynote speaker. He's going to be breaking down the concept of extreme ownership and mindsets for victory according to the home service industry. So we will be having him on tomorrow night. We hope to see you all here at 5 p.m. Layne, thank you so much for joining Roland and I. This was awesome. I learned a lot. I wrote down a bunch of ideas that you gave me. So yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you everyone here.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Layne.
All right.
Hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing here. Love the community you've built, and happy to be a part of it for a few moments.
That was awesome. Super good tips.
All right.
Bye, pros. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.